What's going on, you guys? This is DerekJ Speaks, here to talk about AEW Full Gear 2024 in Newark, New Jersey from the Prudential Center. The show just went off the air not too long ago, with the main event being Jon Moxley defending the World Championship against Orange Cassidy, and what overall was a pretty good match, very bloody, brutal match. OC did bleed in this match, similarly to past encounters with Moxley, but he put up a valiant effort. He stuck in the fight for as long as he could, but in the end, it was not enough. After going through a lot of brutality at the hands of Jon Moxley, it ultimately came down to a bunch of interference. We had Claudio come out, we had Pac come out, of course Marina Shafir was already at ringside with Jon Moxley, but his fellow Death Riders came out. They interfered. We got interference from Kyle O'Reilly and Rocky Romero and Tomohiro Ishii. They brawled with the guys. Willow Nightingale ran out and she took out Marina Shafir, which actually got one of the biggest pops of the entire night. Willow Nightingale coming out and tackling Marina. That got one of the biggest ovations on the entire show. But when Moxley had the referee distracted, Wheeler Yuta ran in and hit the Busaiku knee on Orange Cassidy, and Moxley picked him up, hit him with the elevated Death Rider, and got the win. To no one's shock, the match was really good. It was a very good match. These two have had very good matches in the past. This one was no different. The match was good, except for the finish of the match with all the interference. But then the pay-per-view continued. So then after the match, Mox and Yuta were pouring, I guess the commentators were saying, some kind of cleaning liquid all over Orange Cassidy. He was coughing and hacking it up. And then out of nowhere comes Hangman Adam Page. Of course, he wrestled earlier in the show against Jay White. He comes hobbling out with a steel chair, takes out Wheeler Yuta, comes face to face with Jon Moxley, and then from behind, Christian Cage is out here to lay out Moxley with the Unprettier. And Hangman now has possession of the contract that Christian walks around with, that he won in the Casino Gauntlet at Wembley a few months ago, entitles him to a world title match whenever. And so he was going to use it here. I guess this was something the two of them worked up together here, and Christian goes to cash in, but then out comes Jay White to take out Christian, and then Jay White goes after Moxley, but then Claudio and Pac, they come back in, they take down Jay White, and they leave, and they gather up Moxley, and they scurry out of the building. And then they focus in on Jay White, who's looking on, he's laughing, and then they cut to backstage. The Death Riders are all collectively leaving. They're in the parking lot, heading to their truck that we saw them arrive in. And then out of nowhere, a car comes ramming in and it crashes into their truck. And then Pac kicks some random person in the face, steals his keys, and the Death Riders commit Grand Theft Auto and steal some other van and drive off. And we didn't know who ran into their truck, but then once they leave, the camera pans over, and it's revealed to be Darby Allin, who was behind the wheel of that car that rammed into their truck. He's all bloody faced, he's yelling, he has his skateboard, he's smashing it into the window, and that's how they went off the air. That was a choice, that ending. You know, my thoughts on the ending of this show really can't be properly summed up unless I come out and say I did think this was a good show overall. There was a lot of things on this show that did not need to be on this show because they did not need to be on pay-per-view. There was nothing pay-per-view caliber about a few things and matches that took place on this show, but there also were. There were plenty of great wrestling matches on this show. Some of them the crowd just wasn't wholly into, But some matches were good. Some were better than others and did have the crowd's attention. But then others, the crowd was a little down for. They weren't fully into it, but I still thought it was a pretty decent match. But this ending, the match with Mox and Orange Cassidy was very good until the finish with all the interference. Didn't like that. Didn't like that Wheeler Yuta was the deciding factor in the finish and the outcome of that match. And then everything at the end with the cleaning stuff, and then Christian, and then Jay White, all that stuff running in, and then the car and the parking lot, all that. I guess what they were going for was some kind of chaotic finish here, and things are just a complete mess right now in AEW. The Death Riders, John Moxley and his crew, they're running roughshod over the company, so all of this chaos is coming out here, all this brawling and everything, all this craziness. You want to tune into the TV show to see what's going to happen next. Only, no, not really. If anything, it just made me look like, what the hell is going on, and makes me almost feel like I'm wasting my time watching this. Now, something a little more on the positive side that I can look at coming out of this ending here is that maybe, just maybe, we could be setting up for a big main event for their next pay-per-view, which is World's End at the end of December. Maybe coming out of this, we could get some kind of multi-man match for the championship. Maybe Moxley defending the title against Darby, against Hangman, against Jay White. Jay White certainly is very deserving of a title shot in the near future. I don't know if you want to add Christian into that. Christian, he has his shot, so that's why I'm excluding him. But maybe Hangman can be involved, Jay White. I mean, Hangman and Jay White are more than deserving of being in the world title picture. Darby, mixed thoughts about that, but I can live with that. Ultimately, Darby might be the one to beat Moxley at the end of this whole thing. And throwing in Jay White and Hangman in there could make for a very fun four-way for the championship next month if they choose to go that route. So that's a positive that I can look at, but I don't know if that's going to be what this is leading to. But as for an ending to the show, wasn't my favorite. But like I said, there were some good things that took place on this show. Case in point, we had Will Osprey take on Kyle Fletcher. The two of them had a grudge match on this show, and it was outstanding. It was a great match. I've seen these two guys compete before. We've all seen them compete before. They've had a match on Dynamite earlier this year, but they've been competing for years. And of course, we know they've been teammates with the United Empire, but this match was, in a way, this was a pretty good match for Will Osprey. By Will Osprey standards, it was a pretty good match. For Kyle Fletcher, this is probably the match of his life. This is probably the best match that he has ever had and probably will ever have. And they did a damn good job of making him look as strong as possible, because he went in there and he got the most dominant, decisive, clean victory over Will Osprey since Osprey arrived here in AEW. Osprey has lost and has been pinned, I think, twice since coming this year. And prior to this would make 3. But prior to this, the other times he lost, they were not nearly as clean as this one. So Osprey put over Kyle Fletcher in a big way. He tombstoned him off of the apron down onto some steel steps on the floor. He got him in the ring, delivering all kinds of kicks to him. And then the ultimate blow was him hitting Osprey with a brainbuster on the top turnbuckle and got him down and pinned him 1, 2, 3. And that's all she wrote. So they are going all in on Kyle Fletcher here, and I got no issues with it. Will Osprey, he is the face of the company. He will be world champion regardless of him losing here. That's not going to stop his path. He has a clear path towards the world title at some point next year. I thought a long time ago it would lead to him winning this year. I don't see that obviously happening, but Osprey, his time will come for that world title. It's right there for him, which is why I have no issue with him losing here to Kyle Fletcher, which is why I had it in the back of my mind that Fletcher would win. But I did not expect it to be as decisive as it was here. So very impressed that they went all in with him in that match there. Another match with an outcome that surprised me was Switchblade Jay White and Hangman Page. They had a rematch from their match at Wrestle Dream. Jay White won there. That shocked me. Jay White won again here, which shocked me even more. It shocked me already that Jay White beat Hangman in the first place. It shocked me even more that he beat him twice. He got 2 straight wins over Hangman Page, someone who many months ago I looked at as being the one to ultimately be the top heel world champion right now. So Hangman, of course, he is still a big star. He's not hurt by losing here. And of course, he had the out with his knee injury going into the match. But even during the match, Hangman was targeting Jay White's ankle. So he was injured. So I thought that was going to be an excuse for Jay White to end up losing that match. But no, once again, it was a Blade Runner out of nowhere that gave Jay White the victory over Hangman. And much like their match at Wrestle Dream, this was a great match too. I put more on Osprey and Fletcher personally between those two matches specifically. But Jay White and Hangman, it started a little slow. It wasn't the most exciting opening, but as the match went on, the energy amped up a lot, and I thought it was a great match. And Jay White getting the win shocked me, but I'm happy to see it. I love Jay White. He is a great talent on this roster. He has not been utilized the best since arriving last year, but the stuff that he's been doing with Hangman, which has been a very simple, low stakes program between the two of them, it's been very basic, with Jay White being able to hold all these victories over Hangman and wanting to target his injured knee and all that. It's been a very basic story that they've been telling, but it's been effective. And it's been one of the few things on AEW television week to week that I actually am invested in. So coming here to this show, them having their match, I thought it was very good. That's why I said earlier, if this can lead to, and if you don't even want to go the multi-man route and you just want to go straight up Jay White versus John Moxley one-on-one, I have no issues with that whatsoever. I think that would make for a great main event. And for Jay White, if they can bring back his fellow Bang Bang Gang members, I guess, Juice Robinson and the Gun Boys, I guess, if they can come back from their injuries or whatever, I think, that gives him backup up against the Death Riders. So I think Mox and Jay White could be a great feud by itself and could lead to a great main event for World's End. I wouldn't see Jay White winning, but it would at least make for a good main event match, and it puts Jay White in the main event of the pay-per-view like someone like him belongs in. So just throwing that out there. Bobby Lashley and Swerve Strickland, they had a match on this show. Wasn't the most exciting or flashy match. It was very pro Bobby Lashley. He was very dominant in this match, which I was hoping for, because Lashley just debuted. He is being booked like a monster, like a killer, just like Shelton Benjamin has been booked on TV, along with MVP in their corner. So I knew heading into this match, this isn't going to be on the same level as many of the Swerve Strickland matches on pay-per-view this year. The stuff that he's done with Bryan Danielson and Will Osprey and Hangman and all that stuff that he's been doing this year, it wasn't going to be like that. And this was going to be a spotlight for Lashley, and they did that. Lashley, it wasn't a completely clean victory. Shelton Benjamin was interfering, and MVP was providing a little bit of distraction, but all in all, it was as clean of a victory as you could get for Bobby Lashley here. He made Swerve pass out to the Hurt Lock, and that's about, even if you don't want to look at it like a clean victory, it was a decisive victory. Very heel-heavy victories on this show with very little overabundance or over-reliance on interference and cheating and all that kind of stuff. So good here. And of course, after the match, Prince Nana got locked in the Hurt Lock. I expect these two to run it back at some point, maybe at World's End. Maybe you slap a stipulation on there, and maybe Lashley wins again. If not, and Swerve does get the win, that's fine, but I wouldn't mind seeing Lashley win again. It's not burying Swerve. It's not putting him under. I mean, he is a little bit lower on the card than he was a few months ago, but that's to be expected. There's other people focused on in the world title picture right now. He's doing this with Lashley, and I have no problem with that. Introducing Lashley, giving him some credibility off the jump, putting him in there with a former world champion and getting as dominant of a victory as he did, puts a lot of shine on him. So, good stuff there. The TBS championship was on the line on this show. Mercedes Moné defending the title against Chris Statlander. The entire build-up to this match has completely sucked. The stuff they have done with Mercedes on TV, the partnership with her and Camille being completely botched the way that it has, how they went from presenting Camille as this brick house dominant woman to being this clumsy klutz who Mercedes berates and abuses. She's in a sling. She looks stupid. It's been awful. Even Chris Statlander, who just abruptly turned back into a babyface out of nowhere all those months ago. Mercedes, the aura of this woman when she first arrived in AEW, taking out her former life in WWE as Sasha Banks, taking out the stuff that she did in New Japan last year for a limited time before she got hurt. Ever since arriving in AEW back in March, it has been the slow decline of her star power, of her aura, of her being over with the crowd. She comes out many weeks to crickets. The biggest reaction you hear for her is when her own theme music is shouting CEO, because you know damn well there ain't a single person in these live crowds that are doing it. She'll get booed, she'll get these reactions sometimes, but she comes out there, cuts these promos, gets very little to no reaction. She gets in these matches a lot of times that are very underwhelming. So it's been a steady uphill battle for all the women involved here. But Mercedes and Chris Statlander went out there in front of this crowd that was ready to not care about their match within the first 5 or 8 minutes of it, and they made them care by the end of it. They had a lot of near falls. They had a lot of kickouts, which I will address now, was a bit of a problem on this show. You had many matches up and down this card that I thought were really good, and even some of the ones that I thought were better than others. I will say there were many matches on this show that relied way too much on the false finishes and kickouts. Not even to huge moves, not to a lot of finishing moves, but there were just too many times where a match went on just a little bit longer than it probably should have, because they just put themselves in a position where you lay out your opponent, you get the dramatic cover, and then they kick out, and then they just move on to something else. I think it happened a little too much, especially in that latter part of the pay-per-view. It went on just a little bit too much. And there were elements of that here in this match, because this is probably one of the first matches where I noticed it. But these two ladies still went out there and had a damn good match. This is probably the best Mercedes Moné match since coming to AEW, or at the very least, the best match that she's had since her match at Forbidden Door earlier in the year against Stephanie Vaquer. So this was great stuff between the two of them. And I will say, even if they did rely on the false finishes too much in this match, there were a few that did catch me off guard with Chris Statlander, where it did, I believed for at least a nanosecond, if not for a few seconds, that Chris Statlander was going to win. There was a certain point where Mercedes laid out Chris with, I think, 2 backbreakers and then hit her with the Moné Maker, and I thought it was over. And Chris kicked out, and the fans popped huge for it. But ultimately, in the end, Mercedes was working over Chris's surgically repaired knee, so she used that to her advantage, and she got a deep roll-up cover to get the win. So she escaped with her championship, but this was a great match and was one of the best matches on the entire show. And I talked about the main event. The matches I just went through were some of the highlights of the show for me. Some of the mid points of the show, we had an international championship on the line with Takeshita and Ricochet. Not the greatest match, but I enjoyed it. But this was one of the matches on the show that I thought the crowd was very low for. Up to this point, even if there was just a small break in the action here and there, it was match after match after match, bang, boom, boom, boom. A bunch of singles matches at that, too, where it's a lot of high frenetic energy going back and forth. So this happened about 2 matches before the main event. It was very good, but the crowd just was not overly enthusiastic about it, and they definitely didn't pop huge for some of the stuff that you would expect them to. But they did get into certain things. Ricochet, he is still an elite performer. He can still wow the crowd with his moveset. And Takeshita is way more brutal and an intimidating force to be reckoned with in the ring nowadays. So that got the fans interested at certain points, but just not enough. And Takeshita did retain the championship, which I figured he would. And I don't know where they go from here. I expect Ricochet to be involved in that Continental Classic, which I'm looking forward to a lot. Hell, I would throw Takeshita in there too. I don't care if he's the international champion. Throw him in the Continental Classic as well. Put him in the Continental Classic and then have the finals come down to him and Okada. And screw it. Combine those championships. Unify the international and continental championships. Retire the international title. Keep the continental title. And reduce your championships by at least 1. Because there are far too many titles in this company that do not mean anything. We just see belts on this person and that person. They don't mean anything. So at the very least, you can retire one of them. Especially considering the fact that the Continental title and the International title are essentially the same belt anyway. The name is basically the same. So you can retire one, keep the other, and move forward. So I'm in favor of that. Speaking of titles, the TNT Championship was on the line. Jack Perry defending against Daniel Garcia. You know, I'm not the biggest Daniel Garcia fan in the world, nor am I the biggest Jack Perry fan in the world, but they have done what they could to push their feud along. They have decent chemistry. This is one of the matches on the show that didn't need to be on the show. It could have taken place on Dynamite or Collision or something like that. Probably would have had a more enthusiastic crowd, although maybe not. But they had a pretty good match. The crowd came alive in the middle of it when Jack Perry powerbombed Daniel Garcia through the table in the timekeeper's area. They came alive for that spot, but then not long after that, they went right back to sleep. And they didn't pop up huge again until the finish when Daniel Garcia made Jack Perry tap out and won the TNT Championship. So good for him. TK, Tony Khan, clearly is a big fan of Daniel Garcia. He re-signed him to a big fat paycheck and a new contract. So clearly he has big plans for him. And going into this match, I was hoping that they would just rip the Band-Aid off, get it over with, and put that championship on Garcia, and they did it. So we might get a rematch, but at least it's not going to be months and months of seeing Garcia chase after the title and try to finally get it and fail and keep on trying. He got his shot. He won it. We can move on. What they do going forward, I hope it's interesting. That's all I can ever hope for in this company. The show opened with the tag team titles on the line. Private Party, The Acclaimed, The Outrunners, and the House of Black in a pretty entertaining, solid opening match that saw The Acclaimed get booed a lot. Actually, specifically, Max Caster was getting booed heavily during this match. So much so that at a certain point, Anthony Bowens was getting cheered. The fans were cheering for him. They were chanting for Bowens and chanting his name, and then audibly were chanting, "Fuck you, Max," or "Fuck Max Caster," or something like that. So the fans are completely tired of Max Caster. I personally am very much over the Acclaimed and this whole gimmick. It's gone way past its expiration point. So they're clearly teasing some kind of dissension and breakup between the two of them. The sooner we get to it, the better. I think Anthony Bowens can serve himself well in the singles ranks in the lower card, but they're not going to have a big focus on him because there's plenty of evidence to support that they don't really focus that much on a lot of undercard guys, so he might get lost in the shuffle on Rampage while that show still exists for the time being. But ultimately, that was the most interesting thing about this match for me personally. There was some fun action here and there, but that element of it with the anti-Max Caster stuff was the most interesting. Mainly because I figured Private Party were going to be walking out with the belts. They just won them barely a month ago. And that's exactly what happened. Private Party retained their titles, and that was that. After this match, though, we went into MJF versus Roderick Strong, and these guys had a match. It was very uninteresting, very uneventful. It was a TV match. This is a match that belonged on TV, getting interrupted by a commercial break. This is a match where I was waiting for a commercial break and it never came. These are two very talented professional wrestlers. Roderick Strong is a very, very great wrestler. MJF is a very great wrestler, and they wrestled very well. But the story with this match and the stuff with Adam Cole and everything just wasn't great. MJF hasn't been on television in person in over a month, so I didn't really care for this going into it, and then the match itself didn't really care for. MJF won, made Roddy tap out to the salt of the earth, so to the shock of no one, MJF won. I was just surprised that, again, a heel won essentially clean here in this match, but I guess why bother with any kind of great interference over Roderick Strong? After the match, he Pillmanized Roddy's arm. He trapped his arm into a steel chair and stomped on it. And then after he did that is when they hit Adam Cole's music and he ran out along with the rest of the Undisputed Kingdom. And then Kyle O'Reilly came out and shoved Adam Cole on his ass and was yelling at him. So there's some kind of drama going on there. Hats off to you if you are interested in more Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong drama. Me personally, not interested. It looked like they were building to Adam Cole versus MJF for this show, but the fact that MJF was going to be gone for so long and wasn't going to be on television in person to build up this program probably factored into the plans of it switching over to MJF versus Roderick Strong and holding off on a proper MJF Adam Cole match, probably for World's End, which will be 1 year after the whole devil reveal. So maybe that's where this match happens, and I hope so, and I hope that is where it ends. This is a story that started way early last year with MJF and Adam Cole becoming friends, the brochachos, if you will. And the story played out. Adam Cole suffered that horrible injury, and that derailed things badly. The whole story fell off a cliff with babyface MJF and the whole devil stuff. And then they were both gone. And then they flip-flopped between heel and babyface. It's been insane. But ultimately, let's just hope, at least I hope, that this story can be over. And that's that. But one of the biggest things that happened on this show was on the pre-show, where the Costco guys were there. Big Boom AJ facing QT Marshall in a match. And not for nothing, the crowd was into it. They were hot for it. They were hot for Big Boom AJ. They were hot for his son. They were hot for the Rizzler, I guess. So, good stuff on this show. But I must say, we are still very much in a low point in AEW's history. The show, week to week, has its moments. There are even some shows that are really good some weeks, but then the next week or 2 weeks later, it's very boring, it's very dull. A lot of things on this show just aren't very interesting. A lot of the characters are presented in a very uninteresting manner. This whole Moxley stuff and the Death Rider stuff, it has its moments, but all these months later, it's been going on for this long. I don't care any more for it now than I did when it first started. And that's a problem. And you put baby faces up against them that, for the most part, no one cares about. At least not to that big level. There's a spot for these people on the show, but not in a position where they're presenting themselves as if they're the leaders and they're the defenders of AEW and they're going to fight against them, only for them to just get manhandled, mostly by Claudio by himself, without even going up against Pac or Moxley. But I don't know. And they have the Continental Classic coming back, starting up this week on television. Maybe that'll make for some exciting TV. It was very good last year. Last year was a time when the TV wasn't all that great, and that injected some life into things. Maybe they'll do the same. But these shows need more than just really good wrestling. It needs some stories. They need some characters that we can really latch onto. If you're someone out there who likes the current direction of AEW and you like what's going on right now, good on you. Great for you. Me personally, I don't really love what I'm seeing right now. I see a company and I see a show that at one point was very exciting, was very invigorating, was very riveting, and had great action and a lot of strong personalities and characters that I actually cared about. And we're just at a point right now where it's just very unappealing to follow the show week to week. And the pay-per-view tonight was good, but there's definitely been better. This is not one of the greater pay-per-views that AEW has put on, but it's far from the worst. It's just somewhere right in the middle. And that's just a lot of AEW right now. And I hope they can get it together, but it's hard. And I wouldn't say this if I didn't care. I'm not trying to complain and shit on this company for no reason. I genuinely care about AEW. I like AEW, and I want to love the TV every week. It's just very, very hard. So I hope they can figure out something to get things back on track, because so far, what they've been doing these last few months has not been great. But all you can do is hope. All I can do is tune into the show this week and the week after that and so on and so forth and hope that it's better. Or I can stop watching and then wait until I hear that it is consistently better again, and then we go from there. But we'll see. But that is enough for me as far as this show is concerned, and I'm out of here. So if you like what you see, like what you hear, hit that like button, subscribe, and follow me on social media on Twitter/X at DerekJ Speaks. Till next time, take care.